Our topic today is the attitude of an athlete. This topic is derived from the Apostle Paul's admonition to the Corinthian church in 1 Corinthians chapter 9. In verses 24 and 25 of that chapter, Paul says two very important things to the brethren concerning how to run the Christian race of life. The second thing he said in verse 25 was, every man that striveth for the mastery is temperate in all things. Now they do it to obtain a corruptible crown, but we an incorruptible. But before that, he said in verse 24, and I quote, therefore run that you may win. The idea behind the verse is that anyone who is seriously considering winning in a particular field must exercise self-control and discipline in every area of their life. The verse uses the example of an athlete competing for a prize. It emphasizes that achieving excellence requires self-control in all things, especially those things that affect the competitor. Included in this list of disciplines are things such as diet, training, and behavior, as this action is necessary in order to focus on the ultimate goal, which is to win. The statement that excellence requires moderation in all things is encapsulated in the phrase, attitude determines our altitude. This means that the correct mindset is needed to achieve maximum success, because a positive and determined mindset can determine how high a person reaches in life. This is true both personally and professionally. The statement attitude determines altitude also highlights the importance also of how we think and react to daily challenges. This includes setbacks and successes. This is because our response to life's issues often determine our level of success and achievement. Therefore, a good attitude is always essential. However, a good attitude must be accompanied by hard work and other qualities, including the ability to recognize and seize opportunities and be patient. This statement, attitude determines altitude, is attributed to the American motivational speaker Zig Ziglar. In these words, Ziglar was reminding people of the need to cultivate successful attributes. He often emphasized mindset over skills, attitude over aptitude, the need for resilience when facing challenges, setbacks, or adversity, the ability to adjust one's attitude to influence the direction they need to go in life, and the need to be proactive rather than being reactive in problem solving. Ziegler believed that adopting this positive mindset would result in success. A positive mindset holds true for virtually all disciplines, but nowhere does it beam brighter than in sports, particularly athletics. This is because in athletics, a positive and determined attitude or mindset is at the heart of every successful performance. A mindset which prioritizes discipline, hard work, fitness, and patience. This is why the Apostle Paul in the book of Corinthians likens the Christian journey to a marathon requiring endurance and focus. In reflecting on Paul's analogy, I recently watched a video from a friend whose son was awarded a training scholarship in Brazil. In the video, I never saw this 14-year-old young man actually compete, but I saw short clips of him training. I saw the weightlifting, the press ups and push ups, the tactical drills, the endurance drills, and I was amazed at the extent of the demands placed upon these young men by their coaches to prepare them even for what would be only friendly games among themselves. In addition to watching this young man's training videos, I also listen to stories of the grueling training regimes of some of the world's top athletes and even of some who are not at the top. I also had a conversation with a young man preparing for his paratrooper course. Among the many excruciating things these trainees are required to do is to run a mile and a half in under 9 minutes. As I think about these athletes, sports persons, and soldiers, I hear the words of the Apostle Paul. Now they do it to obtain a corruptible crown. He says, their crowns are corruptible, meaning their joy of winning is short lived. In the ancient Panhellenic Games, victorious athletes were awarded wreaths made of specific leaves. There were no gold, silver, or bronze medals in those days. In addition to the wreaths, winners often received a red wool ribbon tied around their head and held a palm branch. The fact that these wreaths and palms were leaves and quickly withered underscored the transient or fleeting nature of the symbols of their successes, which Paul was emphasizing. Though times have changed, and today athletes are rewarded medals, the transient and temporal nature of earthly successes remains true. Because, as any conscientious sports person or competitor knows, though the medals or rewards of today may glint and glitter a while longer than the leaves and ribbons of the past, everyone knows that as a competitor, you are only as good as your last success. This is because life at the top, especially in sport, seldom lasts very long. Added to which, they live with the realization that even the top competitor or best trained performer can still lose on the day. The best coached football side can still crash out of a tournament at any moment. The best trained and skilled soldiers can still be lost in war. Yet, in spite of the short lived nature of their successes, Paul recognized the sincerity, dignity, sacrifice, commitment, motives, and efforts of the athletes of whom he spoke. He understood that preparation for reaching the top, even in an ultimately insignificant race, still required diligence in the discipline and determination just to be in with a chance of success. Preparation that needed to be maintained, even though the thing for which they strived was temporal. The thing about having a correct mindset is that one is never fazed by that realization that even if against the odds you win, Father Time will eventually render your achievements forgotten. Still, you do not hold back, as is always the case. A new star will arise, long held records will be broken, new faces replace the familiar ones, someone snatches the glory that once belonged to their heroes. This is because it's accepted that life moves on, yet, in spite of knowing all this, that success is temporal, transient, and soon fades. Modern athletes, sports persons, army veterans, and new recruits still train and push their bodies to unimaginable limits, only for their success to fade. And still more people sign up year after year to do it anyway. This moves the apostle to ponder. How much more should Christians put comparative levels of energy, determination, and discipline into living for Christ and into winning souls as it is for an imperishable crown? In Paul's reasoning, it seemed logical that if earthly athletes invest and sacrifice so much just for a corruptible crown, that Christians should be willing to do no less. Because in the case of the Christian athlete, that kind of comparative effort was towards an incorruptible crown, a crown that does not fade, a crown that is eternal. Now, some may ask, is Paul here saying that the Christian works for his salvation? of curse not. He makes no mention of such. What Paul is emphasizing with this sentiment is that Christians, by comparison, should be motivated by the reality that their striving in Christ leads to an even greater and long lasting reward, a reward that cannot be measured or valued by time. This is why Paul spoke passionately about the kind of comparative effort believers should put in for the incorruptible prize. Thus, understanding Paul's emphasis makes everything he said in comparing the Christian life to that of an athlete in a race so very meaningful. Hence his admonition, so run that ye may obtain. This tells me that in Paul's mind, there is a correct way to run this Christian race. There is a prescribed way to walk with God. It is not a carefree, trial free existence. It is a walk that demands sacrifice. Paul therefore delineates specific steps which the Christian runner must take. He says in verses 25 to 27, "And every man that striveth for the mastery is temperate in all things. Now they do it to obtain a corruptible crown, but we an incorruptible. I therefore so run, not as uncertainly. So fight I, not as one that beateth the air, but I keep under my body, and bring it into subjection, lest that by any means, when I have preached to others, I myself should be a castaway." From Paul's words, we find the following truths. Firstly, there is the need to strive. Therefore, effort is needed. Lasting results seldom come without genuine effort. Secondly, there is the need to be temperate. Therefore, patience is needed. By using the word obtain, Paul indicates that there is a reward to be received, and rewards are usually only given at the end of the race. Paul also says there is a need to run. This suggests ongoing activity. The Christian life must never be stagnant. The term not as uncertainly suggests clarity of purpose training and running. It underlines a disciplined, focused approach. The phrase not as one that beateth the air indicates that there must be no futile, ineffective efforts. Paul therefore urges the Christian to copy the athlete who maintains not just form and fitness, but also reputation, loss of which could lead to disqualification even after reaching the finish line. He stresses, I keep under my body, meaning I maintain my body with diligent and conscious discipline, and bring it into subjection, meaning the complete mastery of one's conduct. By using the word lest, Paul gives his reason for such meticulous action. He does not want to risk losing. The phrase by any means shows his awareness of loopholes and dangers that must be guarded against. When he says, lest when I have preached to others, he acknowledges responsibility to be an example to others. And when he says, I myself, he means that no one else can do this for him. He must do it for himself. He concludes with, lest he should be a castaway, meaning that he must exercise diligence to avoid blowing his chances and missing the prize. Again, the question comes, is Paul saying that as Christians, we work for our salvation, and furthermore, we can lose it? I don't think so. The passage is yet another instance where the Apostle Paul uses a simple and common analogy to convey a profound spiritual truth, the need to be diligent and disciplined in our walk with the Lord. Such emphasis is common in Paul's writings. In Ephesians 6, he used another analogy. It is that symbolizing the armor of a Roman soldier to clarify the rudiments of spiritual warfare. In that passage, as well as this one, Paul's reasoning is that Christians need discipline and self-control in their lives, comparing the Christian life to the discipline of athletes in a race. Paul therefore reminds believers that while athletes strive for a perishable prize, Christians strive for an imperishable, eternal reward. His emphasis, therefore, is the need for believers to focus on long-term spiritual goals rather than short-term earthly rewards. Paul therefore encourages believers to adopt a disciplined lifestyle, not just for earthly success, but for their eternal reward. Thank you for listening, and God bless.
The following content was produced by the Authentic Church Ministry Network of ACM Training Room, Limited, West Midlands, UK. For more information, please email us at trainingroomacm@gmail.com or call us on the telephone number 07 349 938548, area code +44.